Grace joining us today, as you can see from Florence. What a great photo. And Grace is here to really just answer our questions. You know, what's life like on site in Florence? What might the spring be like? Anything that you want to know as you make your decision, Grace will do her best in answering. And we know that things are changing all the time, but it's great to get the perspective from somebody who is, you know, seeing it every day. So I'm going to start off by just handing it over to Grace. She can introduce herself and give you a quick overview, and then we can kind of open it up to questions.
Wonderful. So before I share my screen with you, I brought, on top of the background behind me. So I'm calling in from my office here in Florence. And so I thought that I'd put in a nice shot of what it actually looks like here in the city. Just to introduce myself, my name is Grace Joe. I work in the Provost office here at Florence University of the Arts. I'm originally from Southern California. That's where I was born and raised, and went to college up in Northern California. And I've been in Italy for the past 16 years and working full-time for FUA in the past 8 or 9 or so. Kind of lost count there. But it's a big pleasure for me to be able to share with you some views and perspectives of not only our institution, but obviously the beautiful city of Florence that really considers a part of our campus itself. So I will start sharing my screen. Can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So FUA is a longtime partner of CIS, and so we're thrilled to be continuing to work together and working with CIS students in future programming, and we're really excited about 2021, despite the hardships and difficulties of this particular year. And part of my goal today is to really just kind of walk you through the city of Florence and walk you through our campus and give you an actual view of what it's really like here. So this aerial view that you see is literally of the Florence city center. Now, Florence does have its greater metropolitan area, but fortunately for all of us here at FUA and for any students coming here, everything that we do is located in the city center. So we have 7 different locations right in the historic center, and all student housing and activities, everything is right in the city center. It's very much of a walking city, and I have to say, as a Californian, I had to get used to it in the beginning. I was used to driving and being in the car all the time, literally 24/7, but there's this really beautiful aspect of especially Florentine culture, because it's not necessarily the same everywhere in Italy, but in Florence, you can truly walk everywhere and use your own 2 feet as a mode of transportation. Florence is in the center of Italy, so it is a huge capital for the arts, culture in general, and so much innovation has happened here in the city. So whether one is studying in the sciences or in the arts of all kinds, you will find inspiring moments throughout our history here that will really stimulate and challenge your studies in a positive way. This graph shows really quickly what's really unique about our learning model. So at the center, we have the institution, and then the first ring is represented by our academic divisions. What's really important is this third outer ring. We're the only institution in Italy to really have an established system of community engagement projects. And so every academic division at FUA is expected to interact with the local community through a variety of projects, whether it be through exhibitions, collaborations with local entrepreneurs, and so on and so forth. And so it's really, really important for us as an institution for our students to feel like they're not just visitors or just studying in Florence, but we want you through your studies to feel like you're a part of the city and also giving back to the city. And so to cultivate that civic sense of belonging here. And so in terms of our program, so I briefly spoke about our learning model, which is based on community engagement, and we do that through experiential learning. We have programs throughout the year, and so CIS will advise you on exactly, what type of program you may be interested in terms of experiencing here with us. What I really wanted to highlight is we have an incredible breadth and diversity of classes here at FUA. And so we have things that are really compatible with all different majors, whether we're looking at the liberal arts, digital media, We have a lot of STEM courses available. We have courses in fashion, hospitality, business, so really across the board. And we really, and again, going back to that learning model that we have, it's super important for our students and our faculty to engage with the academic topics through local resources and how you can really engage with the community and the culture here. On top of our academics, and this is a question that actually does come up every once in a while. We're an international institution, so all of our courses are held in English. And so it's not a silly question if you had that question and you were planning on asking it later. There is one exception. We do have Italian language as our foreign language. And so obviously that kind of coursework will be held most often in Italian. The other point I really wanted to focus on is for CIS students, our institution, because of the partnership, we really dedicate a lot of time and opportunities in terms of extracurriculars and things that you can get involved in, and so that you feel that you're really feeling that you're taken care of throughout the program. And so some of the extracurriculars are actually really neat. We have obviously our wellness classes, Pilates, yoga on a weekly basis for students, but we also have for semester students our Italian Family Club. And so you can be adopted by a family. You don't have to live with them. You'd be in student housing, but you meet with the family once a week in the fall or spring semester. You exchange cultural activities, or you can also sign up for the Chapel program where you're exchanging languages with native speakers here. And then we have our sports activities. We have tons of extracurricular clubs that you can be a part of. And then just to kind of wrap up my part, and I know it's, we probably have a lot of questions and we want to discuss, your upcoming program decisions. I wanted to walk you through our campus. And so, as I mentioned before, Florence is a walking city and we're very much of a city campus. And so our campus is kind of dotted throughout the historic city center. So we're in different buildings in different neighborhoods, everything within walking distance, no more than 15 minutes. And so this is a view of one of our main campus buildings. And we love it because we have this palm tree, which has almost become like a mascot, but it's about 200 years old and it's still standing. And then you'll see the exact same building from the other side of the river. Florence, like most European cities, are divided in half by a main river. In our case, it's called the Arno River. And so you'll see the same building we saw on the previous slide, but from the opposite river view. And then the institution has our main library facilities. We have some really interactive classrooms. And so this room used to be a ballroom historically in terms of its function in the building. And so we've kind of kept that festive atmosphere, but we like to use seating that is conducive to interaction and not just this frontal, your faculty delivering topics to you from the front of the classroom. A couple of our building entrances, as you can see, Florence is a really Renaissance city. And so our buildings, their foundations will date to the Renaissance or even, medieval periods, very historic, but again, we have a lot of architects in our faculty as well. So you can see, we always like to put our modern touch. This is another example of a very interactive classroom where we have our wine and culture classes happening that a lot of students actually like to take for gen ed courses because they're compatible with anthropology and sociology. Wine is very much a part of Italian culture. So we have these really neat tables with a sink system built into them for specialized wine tastings. And then this is actually another classroom as well. We have our sports and dance departments, which are different academic divisions, but both of them will use a classroom space such as this for some of the courses that we offer here every single academic season. And then we also have, I mentioned some of those community engagement projects. And so one highlight that I wanted to focus on is our School of Hospitality has its own pastry shop. Here are two views, spa, and restaurant. And these are all projects that not only engage students from these departments in their studies, and so they're putting to practice what they learn in classrooms that are these really interesting learning labs that we share with the public. But also when you're in Florence, you also have the option of adding on additional or adding on meal plan points. And so you can use these units that you would purchase upon arrival. You would load them, they'd be loaded up on your ID card, and then you can use them at the pastry shop, as well as the spa, as well as the restaurant. And so these are just 3 examples of some of the really neat community projects that we have. And I have to say, the restaurant and the pastry shop slash bistro are really, they have these really gourmet approaches to food. Italy is really big on food, as you probably know. And so the meals that are produced there are done by our professional chefs and professional culinary and baking and pastry students, who are doing this as a part of their learning practice. And so your on-campus dining experience actually becomes a way to support your fellow students and faculty members as well. So I will stop sharing now and hand it over to my CAS colleagues if they have any lead questions, or Bryce or David. I really like David's last name, Toscano, by the way, because we're in Tuscany right now. But yeah, for any questions or comments or things that you're curious about, I'm wide open.
Yeah, thanks, Grace. That was awesome. And I'm ready to go now. Thank you. ready to get on a plane. And Florence is one of my favorite cities, I will say. So those images really helped take me back. So David and Bryce, I just wanted to see if you had any pressing questions in case you had to run to class or anything. I have questions that students have sort of submitted ahead of time, so I'll work through those too, kind of more specific to COVID-19 and what's going on in campus right now. But if you two have any questions you want to ask now, feel free, or you can ask later, whatever you want.
I would say we were curious about what the COVID restrictions were, I'd say overall. So if you have any information on that type of stuff, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of information I can share, so I'll try to condense it. So basically, the first kind of premise that I always like to make when I talk about COVID in Italy is that it requires a really big cultural shift in terms of overall understanding of how COVID is managed here in Italy. And I would also say Europe, but Italy has, I think, done a better job than a lot of other European countries, to be honest with you. So I'll just be specific to Italy. So one of the biggest differences, and I will mention this right away because I assume that David and Bryce are both from the US, as we all are. So one of the biggest differences that you'll need to be aware about is that here, the central government has basically mandated everything. And so there's a very much direct approach in terms of decision-making, enacting policy and regulations and protocols for COVID. And I mention this because I myself am from the US as well. And so, and even though I've been here for 16 years, in my mindset, when I think about government, my immediate kind of instinct tells me, oh, I need to be thinking about federal versus state, right, in terms of decision making and governments. And so that's one big difference here. And Italy, unfortunately and fortunately, was the first European country to kind of appear on the world COVID timeline. So it has actually turned out to be good for us. I mean, yes, in the beginning, we got a pretty bad rep because all the news was coming from Italy, and it was just a matter of time before we realized that it was everywhere, not just here in Europe, but everywhere worldwide. But the advantage of all of this is that the Italian government has been very proactive from the beginning. So, we did a very, 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 very serious and severe lockdown between March and May, basically. And when I say lockdown, I mean a lockdown where you really couldn't leave your home. And if you did have to leave your home to even go to the pharmacy, you had to fill out this like self-declaration form. Otherwise you would risk fines, and people did get fines. I mean, there are penalties here. So just to fast forward a little bit, at the end of May, we started to reopen everything. And as of today, everything is fully reopened here in Italy. The educational field was kind of that last sector to reopen because the government had decided prior months ago, we know that schools and universities tend to have their natural start cycle in the fall. And so we're just going to decide ahead of time that schools are not going to open into the fall. So We work, we normally offer tons of summer programs, but along with every other educational entity here in Italy, we were closed. And so our campus has reopened. We're doing fully face-to-face coursework. We are following not only our own institutional protocol for COVID safety, but we are required by law to obviously comply with the national Italian COVID safety and hygienic protocol. So this means that we are respecting social distancing at all times. We are wearing our masks. Anytime that we're not able to respect a 1 meter distance, which is basically our social distancing measure, we have to wear masks. And when we go to any public place, indoor, outdoor, again, we are, for example, if I go grocery shopping, I went to the supermarket last night, in those kind of situations, I would have to put my mask on the entire time. People have been very compliant with the overall regulations. It's not fun or it's not anything to smile about, but people have been very responsible here and very respectful of the government's expectations. Also because they're not just expectations, but they're mandatory regulations that we have to follow. Currently, I'm sure you've all seen in the news that France and Spain and England have been experiencing, second flare-ups again and mini second waves. Strangely, that hasn't been the case here in Italy. So, there were slight increases in numbers, especially with people coming back from vacation. So basically the government decided to do more testing to be able to foresee for, people moving in between different places in Italy, especially in the month of August. And so right now we're currently doing anywhere from 100 to 150,000 tests a day. And despite that, our increases have been very gradual. Our numbers have been very gradual. Nowhere near these really interesting spikes we've been seeing in other European countries, but probably that's due to the fact that no other country in Europe has put in measures like here in Italy. France and Spain, they've done some form of lockdown, back in March and April and May. And then they did their gradual reopenings as well. But generally speaking, here in Italy, it's been very, very, very compact. And healthcare, because healthcare is public and state, I would say state run, basically financed by all of our tax dollars. The idea of public health and public health policy, also in terms of cultural shifts and differences in overall mentality and perspectives that you may have public health, is quite different here in Italy as well. So everyone is on the public health system in terms of benefits and coverage. And obviously the National Health Institute, which is a part of the public health system, they've been providing the scientific information and evidence that will inform the government's decisions. And then to be honest with you, if I can speak from, everything that I've set up to now is from an institutional government point of view. As an individual, I have to say that it's really nice to see the city open again. The one thing that obviously we miss are tourists from the US or from China, for example. Those are two very important markets for the Florentine tourism industry. However, we're following basically EU policy in terms of who can come in and out of Europe. So in terms of Italy currently, as an international student, you have the right to enter Italy enrolled in an academic program. So you wouldn't have to worry at all in terms of getting here to Italy. If you're thinking about a spring semester, we'll have to see if a quarantine is going to be required or not. If it's going to be required, in any case, you have nothing to worry about because with CIS, we have already set up the entire quarantine planning and logistics for where you'd be staying, how you would go about managing your meals without being able to leave your apartment, advising services. You would do a virtual session as soon as you arrive with the staff in terms of what to expect and what to do basically during the 2-week period. We've had many fall students go through this process without a glitch, and it's been very smooth overall. And we've also had our fall intensive semester students come into Italy from the US without any issues. Some came for studies that are longer than 90 days, and so they went through the visa process. Other students they did not go through the visa process because they opted for our 11-week semester. And even with the quarantine attached to that, it was still under 90 days. And so what we did was work with our partner to provide, the enrollment letter, proof of quarantine lodgings, and obviously housing for the rest of the semester. And so our fall students are all here. They haven't had any issues. Now, of course, there are some countries on the European list, like Brazil, and 7 or 8 other countries where you just cannot come into Europe at all. But that does not apply to US citizens. If you're a US citizen wanting to come to Italy to study, you're enrolled in a program, then you have the right to enter. The one thing is that, if your parents wanted to visit as for tourism purposes, they would not be able to, at least as of today. And regulations are changing on a weekly, monthly basis. So again, I would really like to focus on everything that I shared with you now is valid as of today. The trend in terms of regulations has been things opening, things easing up. And so obviously I would hope and, foresee an even more easy spring 21 semester to get through. And spring 21 is a semester that is definitely open and totally eligible for US students to come study for. And the quarantine housing period for 2 weeks that's basically what our fall students had to do now. And so we will see over the next couple of months if that will still be in place for the spring. If it is, as I mentioned before, no qualms, nothing to worry about, because all of those processes and logistics are in place with CIS. So I hope that was helpful.
Thanks, Grace. That was great. One point of clarification, you mentioned classes are back to being fully face-to-face. Does that mean there's not any virtual coursework happening right now? Or is there some split between the two?
So we have students on both types of status. Actually mentioned Brazil earlier because we have students who are from Brazil who are on some of our long-term programs, and they had to stay in their own home countries, and so they're doing all their coursework remotely. But for students who are here in Florence and have completed their quarantine period, all the coursework is on campus. And the reason so the coursework on campus, the way that it works is that basically all of our classrooms have been capped in order to maintain the social distancing requirements as per national law. And then we have a whole bunch of safety, sanitation protocols in place on campus. Temperatures are checked every single day when somebody enters on campus. You have to leave your data as well. And that is for everyone, whether you're staff, students, or an external supplier dropping off toilet paper, not joking. And then we have students who, for example, may be in Florence, but for example, let's say that they needed to, this hasn't happened yet, but maybe someone wasn't feeling well. And so there's a national health policy where, let's say that I, as a student or a staff member at FUA, I was getting a cold, and let's say I got a fever, and even it has nothing to do with COVID at all, I'm still required to stay at home to see if my fever remains or drops under 48 hours. Otherwise, if it were to continue, then I would have to get tested. So this is just another example of how when an individual may need to remain at home, but again, if you're in an academic program, you still need access to your courses. And so during that short time frame, I would switch over to the remote learning status of my course. We have had students, another example could be, we have had students who were not able, because this summer was such a condensed period of changes and regulations and travel restrictions and things like that happening worldwide. A few of our students, for example, from Taiwan, were not able to change their flights 2 weeks earlier for their quarantine. And so they had to arrive on their normal program start date, and they did their first round of lessons for the first 2 weeks remotely through our MyFUA platform. So there will be cases where, let's say, a student may be temporarily on a remote status.
Yeah, but if someone wanted to and they didn't get sick, they could go to class every day
Yes,
the entire time.
absolutely.
It's not like a 1 week virtual, 1 week in person kind
No,
of split.
no.
Okay.
And we are able to do this because of what the Italian government has mandated. All schools have reopened. Obviously, you're open, but you have to follow a bunch of rules and protocol. But we are open, and as long as we respect the very many bullet points and fine print that the government has provided for us, we are holding all of our classes face to face, except for certain special cases where a student would need to pass over temporarily to a remote status. And if that were to be necessary, then we have our digital platform in place. And so that's a very seamless process.
Thank you. David and Bryce, sorry to jump in there and steal some questions, but you guys have any more?
Yeah, it's an important question, I think. When you say fully open, does that include like restaurants and stuff like that?
Yeah, our restaurants have been open since the end of May, basically. There's not one sector or industry that hasn't reopened here in Italy. I know it's kind of hard to imagine because, again, different countries are in different points of that COVID timeline. I speak to my parents, in California, and in July, I sent them a text to wish them happy anniversary for, their 38th wedding anniversary. And I asked them the silly question of, oh, so did you have a nice romantic dinner? And they said, oh, well, we're not going out to dinner here in California. And I'd completely forgotten because here our restaurants have been open basically since the end of May.
I kind of have a few questions, so I'll just try to think of which ones to ask. So obviously, like a big part of abroad is like travel, like on the weekends and stuff. So like, obviously, like I don't think like traveling to like other countries is gonna be like the biggest thing. But like, how is travel like within Italy? Like if we want to go to various like cities within Italy.
Oh, no restrictions at all. I mean,
Okay.
of course, when you're traveling on, various means of transportation, if you're, let's say that, I often have to take the train to go to, towns nearby, and on public means of transportation, you always have to wear a mask as of today. So again, you have no travel restrictions. You can go wherever you want in Italy. You just have to make sure that you are following the regulations of whatever type of transportation you're taking, but no restrictions at all within Italy. And I know that, students often ask about inter-Europe travel. So basically, European travel is not an issue. And I have, personal friends of mine that are traveling back between different European countries for work. However, if you are planning to go somewhere in Europe, I would always highly recommend that you or any student check in with our student life staff here in Florence, just because European policy can change on a fairly quick basis. And to give you an example, currently in Italy, if someone is coming in from France or Spain, you would have to have had a COVID blood test done within 72 hours prior to departure. And this is because of the situation in France and Spain right now. But so again, before booking that trip and saying, hey, I'm going to go spend the weekend in Paris, it's really, really important that you stay up to date with what movement within Europe is looking like. And we keep a page updated on our institutional website um, in terms of travel into Europe. However, and this is again mainly based on thinking about students who need information in terms of getting into Italy for the academic program. But again, because there may be different regulations, between countries A, B, C, all the way to X on the European list. It's really good to check in with institutional staff to make sure that, you're potentially not getting yourself into a situation where, okay, I'm going to go to Hungary, but oops, on the way back, I need to get a test somehow. And so you don't want to get into any of those kind of sticky situations. Now, that said, again, just to reiterate, travel within Italy, no problem at all. And then travel within European countries because you are already in Europe is totally okay as long, and I would highly recommend, if you're looking into locations, look for locations that don't have any restrictions reciprocally between Italy and that country.
Okay, so definitely travel within Italy, but also like travel within Europe is definitely possible. Like we're not going there like ruling out like not seeing any other
Yeah,
places besides
exactly.
Italy. Okay,
Exactly. And again,
perfect.
it's just a couple of weeks ago that Italy decided that travelers coming in from France and Spain needed to have a test done. And this is something that could be, not valid anymore in 3 weeks from today. And so again, based on the country to country situations in terms of how COVID is handled and the numbers, obviously each country, so the Italian government in our case here is deciding, okay, what do we want to do with travelers coming in from country A and country B? And so I just wanted to kind of highlight this current example that we're going through because, if you are planning, and it's not impossible, but, you definitely want to maybe check in first and to really make sure that you're informed of going somewhere that's not going to tack on any additional requirements or sticky situations for you.
Awesome. And also, so like a lot of the classes are like interactive, like with like wine tasting and like cooking food, like I read in the description. How is that? Like, is that obviously there must be like rules and regulations, like is it still like hands-on, like?
Yeah, so I mean, all of our coursework has come back to the way that was before. The main difference is the number of students per section. That has to be obviously capped according to the national regulations. We need to make sure that folks are maintaining their distance at all time and any type of academic activity. So, if you do sign up for one of our food and culture or wine and culture courses because you're looking to maybe fulfill a gen ed or so, or you're just really passionate about these topics, you'll definitely, well, maybe in your case, you'd be new on campus, and so it'd be normal for you. But I'm just thinking about maybe a couple of semesters ago, we would have had X number of students in the classroom, whereas that number has now become Y. And then actually, from our culinary lab standpoint, those courses are probably the ones that have historically paid most attention in detail to safety and sanitation, just because of what it takes to be able to do food handling for and to be able to teach those types of courses. And I'm referring to our faculty. So yeah, it's completely hygienic, completely safe at all times with our lab courses as well.
Awesome, thank you. And then probably just like my final question, like, what do you think would have to happen for the Florence University to like cancel, like for us not to be able to go abroad? Like it would most likely be like an Italian restriction versus an American.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like.
So for us, and I'm going to mention the CDC because I've seen a lot of emails of a concerned student or their concerned parent of a student who have been writing to us saying, well, the CDC is saying here in the U.S. this and that. And I'm going to be very blunt and honest. That has nothing to do with us here in Italy. The CDC does not apply to anything that we do here because we have our own National Health Institute. We have our government which is directly delegating and directly making all those decisions for the entire population without any middlemen, basically. So if let's say that you were here, right? A worst case scenario would be something like what happened this past spring, where there was a lockdown in the middle of the semester. If that were to happen, in any case, the academics of your program will always be guaranteed by CIS and FUA, always. And this is really thanks to our digital platform. And so let's say that, you're doing our 11-week semester and all of a sudden in week 8 something happens, and it's only the Italian government can decide for the institution, and all institutions and all businesses and all types of organizations in Italy, whether you can close or not. So that will only come from a direct mandate from the government if we were to have to shut down, which is what happened to us in the spring, because there was the outbreak worldwide. And we just happened to have experienced it very early, basically right after China. And so, in this kind of worst case scenario, let's say that a lockdown does happen during the semester, then yes, you would be immediately switched over to our remote learning program completion status. And basically you would be doing all of your coursework remotely, and you'd be guaranteed all of your credits and all the completion of all your academics, 100%.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you guys know if we have to put this on a doc or anything?
Sorry?
Oh no, sorry. I'm kind of balancing 2 classes right now. I just didn't have that muted.
Oh, okay, no problem.
David, do you have any other questions?
This one's kind of a hard question, but it's about the pricing. I didn't really take a picture of it or anything like that, but it was about like, if the program cancels said number of days before, then you get a certain percentage back. Can you just clarify that part of it?
Sure, I'll take that one. So if you guys want to cancel your program for any reason up until 22 days before the program starts, you'll be given full refunds.
Is that if we cancel?
Yep, or for any reason, any cancel reason at all.
Okay.
So you can say, this isn't looking good, or, I'm not going to be able to do what I want to do, and I don't want to go anymore. You don't need a reason. And you can get a full refund up until 22 days before the program starts. Same thing, if we have to cancel the program, you'll be given a full refund up until 22 days before the program starts. If we have to cancel or you cancel between 22 days and when you arrive on site, you would be given a partial refund, but not a full refund. And then there is insurance, CFAR and IFAR insurance, that's canceled for any reason, and interruption for any reason insurance. Those are things outside of CIS. They're not like something that we offer, but we found a really good policy through our medical insurance company, CISI. And basically you can insure your trip even after those, past the 22-day mark, so that the insurance would refund up to 80% of your costs. And it's not just the CIS abroad tuition fees, it's also like your flight or anything else you guys have booked. So, let's say you spend 20 grand on this trip in total. The premiums for the insurance is about 10%, it seems. So you'd spend an extra 2 grand, but then if you had to cancel for any reason at all, it's any reason you want, you'd be given 80% back, so about $16,000 back. So it's a little expensive, but at the same time, it would cover the vast majority of your costs if you wanted that extra peace of mind, or your parents did.
Mm-hmm. And I guess this one would be for Grace. What do you think the possibility is of actually getting canceled? And that would be up to the Italian government, correct?
Yeah, only the Italian government could decide if we had to shut down. What I can tell you is that the Minister of Health here in Italy, Speranza is his last name, has basically released a declaration that was picked up by the New York Times. I happened to read it the other day, and he said that the government is very much intent on not doing another lockdown or shutdown like what we had to do this past March. I mean, it's been a huge learning curve for everybody. And so, you know, I think one thing that has been interesting for us is really to learn how to live alongside the virus, live alongside Corona, as opposed to really only thinking about how can we get rid of it. And again, this is purely, and I say this as a disclaimer, purely as a personal, from a personal standpoint. You know, I don't know how safe it is for us to think that the virus will ever go away 100% because, you know, mankind has not been able to get rid of the common flu. But it's really important that people collaborate and respect, you know, any measures that are put out regarding these types of pandemic situations and new viruses. And that's something that we've all kind of had to deal with here, and I speak for us here in Italy. You know, putting on new hats, putting on new habits, and getting used to them. You know, of course, it wasn't easy in the beginning, but again, our overall track record has been incredibly positive thus far. And you know, no one is getting it perfect right now, but I can say that Italy is at a very, very good standpoint compared to its European counterparts, and especially in terms of how our healthcare system has been constant with the testing. It realized some of the mistakes that were made in the northern regions, where, you know, there weren't there's a huge elderly population. A lot of the numbers of folks who have actually passed away from it, they basically all had pre-existing conditions. And so, you know, and again, these are not fun facts to talk about, but here there is very much the overall mindset coming from the government itself in terms of we want to make sure that we're putting out current and coherent regulations for us to follow without having to go on lockdown again.
Thank you for all of that, Grace. So helpful. Any final questions? You guys have really covered all the questions that I had kind of ready to go. So between everybody, any last topics or anything else you want to share? Anybody?
I think I'm pretty good. I mean, I think this was pretty beneficial for us because like we weren't sure like what the situation in Florence was like regarding like what was open and how life was there, but seems like it's a lot better than America right now. So
and I think stats-wise, yes. And, you know, and again, this is a situation that is global. It has touched every corner of the world.
yeah.
But, you know, one big fortune that we've had is, again, being so early on that COVID timeline. You know, if I were to teletransport you to Florence today, you wouldn't believe your eyes, because basically your people are going to stores, wearing their masks, walking out and about. And there are tourists. I mean, Florence, you know, the tourism part of the industry is probably the most important part of our industry here. And there are lots of tourists here. You know, they just happen to not be from the US, not be from Brazil, and not be from China and the other countries that cannot come in for tourism. But there are tons of European tourists traveling, lots of Italians who've really taken advantage of, you know, let's do local travel since we don't really feel safe with going abroad. And so, yes, here and again, Florence and Tuscany in general, we've never been nowhere near the top of the list, the Italian list for COVID cases. And so, you know, we kind of had to suffer through the lockdown because of other regions that had, you know, the higher number of cases. But again, we've basically, most of the hospitals here have even dismantled most of their COVID units just because, you know, all the preparation was done, but it was never utilized even up to 30% of its capacity. So that's just to give you an idea of what it's like. Now, of course, coming here, and I don't want to bore David and Bryce with any of the details that you'll get during orientation sessions and the virtual session if you do come to Florence. But you'll get a full lowdown on what it means and to be respectful towards COVID regulations, and the fact that here they are regulations. You can be penalized for not following them. And so they're to be taken very seriously. One thing that's kind of a part of common thought here is that everyone needs to do their part. And COVID compliance. Oh, here's an important thing that I didn't really think about until I thought about it in US terms. COVID compliance is not, and wearing masks is not politicized here in Italy. It's just what you do. It's not a part of what you believe or what you think and what part of the political spectrum you're on. You just follow the rules. And I think the contributions of society and the population at large in terms of working with these regulations have done tons for our results here. And I mean, that's not the only factor, but yeah. And then on the other hand, the other thing that I wanted to leave you both with is that, if you do come, I think it'll be a very special experience for you as US students. Actually, let me put it this way. A colleague of mine, or a friend of mine, sorry, who's from New York, was able to enter Europe recently because of, she's getting her Spanish residency, and that's where also her life partner lives. And she works often here in Italy because of her job. And so because of these two factors, she wasn't coming in for tourism, but because of her EU residency and her work appointments in Italy, she was able to come. And she said a phrase to me the other day. She said, I feel so fortunate to be here because no one that I know is basically traveling, and I know I'm traveling for work and it's not travel for pleasure, but I feel so fortunate to be able to be here in Italy. And that really opened my eyes for a second. And I thought, what a special and unique opportunity that a US student could have in terms of to be able to live a fully on campus and live experience in terms of your education and your academic career track. B, in terms of personal enrichment. So you'd be basically relating yourself to a new place and new spaces in a completely different way than how you are living right now. And so I think that, again, I'm sure, I mean, even going to a different country without COVID happening in the world is not, it takes courage. And then, of course, this year in 2020, and maybe for a part of 2021 as well, because there is COVID, the whole challenge could seem even more daunting. But I just wanted to really give you this final reassurance. You have good people behind you. CIS is our partner, us as an institution. And I really think that if you do make the choice to study abroad, especially now in these difficult world times, it will really become an experience that you'll never forget. Study abroad always is an experience that is going to be life-changing. I really do think that upcoming study abroad in 2021 will truly, truly, truly be triple life-changing for a whole bunch of different motives. And so I'm really glad that you guys are both able to log on today. And actually, I wanted to ask you one final quick question. Which majors are you thinking about or have you chosen at your home universities?
Dave, I'm a finance sport management double major, so I'm
Okay.
business, but I have saved all my like we call them breadth requirements.
Yeah.
So like I could take 4 courses in like any subject over there.
Oh, awesome.
I'm communication, but I'm basically done with that. So I would only be taking econ classes for a minor that I just picked up.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I won't get into all the nuts and bolts of the hundreds of classes that we offer. You'll be able to find something that fits the bill in both of your cases. Yeah. And other than that, it was nice to meet you. Good luck with the rest of your semester now this fall. And hopefully we will be seeing you here in Florence very soon.
Thank you.
When's this case?
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. This has been wonderful.
Yeah.
It's been